Welcome to brandrepublic.tv. My name is Philip Smith, and today we're going to be looking at the one person who lies at the heart of everything in advertising, media and marketing. Yes, we're going to take a look at the consumer, and in particular, the way that the UK population is changing its media habits. Apparently, on average, when we're awake, we now spend 24% of our time watching television, 13% of the time listening to the radio, 7% of it using the internet, and 3% of our time reading a newspaper or a magazine. I've also discovered that over half of mobile phone users cannot imagine life without their mobile. And I know that in the last 12 months, 40% of internet users have used at least one social networking site. More worryingly, 82% of adults feel that some adverts appear so many times they become irritating. Those particular nuggets of information, and many more, come thanks to Touchpoints, the IPA's influential and ambitious cross-media project, which has just launched its second phase. Touchpoints breaks down consumer behaviour, and it shows the media people consume hour by hour, and it even gives us an idea of the mood they're in. This is starting to sound like powerful stuff, and to explain why it's important, I'm delighted to welcome Jim Marshall, Chairman Starcom UK and also Head of the IPA Media's Futures Group, and Lynne Robinson, the IPA's Research Director. Guys, welcome to the brandrepublic.tv studio.
Thank you.
Now tell me, Jim, we hear a lot about Touchpoints. Why is it important?
I wouldn't say so much important as essential. And I think it's essential because what Touchpoints does is it measures the way that people now use media. I guess, if you go back to the old days and the old forms of, well, not so much the old forms, they're still current forms of media research, they're all based on the individual media. So they measured people's use of those particular media. What Touchpoints does is it looks at the consumer, and it looks at how the consumer is behaving, not just within the individual media, but across media, how they're multitasking. And that absolutely is the way that people are going to behave in the future. And that's why Touchpoints is so critically important.
And then do you think that's the case? Do you think that it is something that's unique?
I think it's quite unique. It's being copied extensively around the world now. However, I think one of the things about Touchpoints, by putting the consumer at the heart and looking at their media consumption, how they spend their time, their attitudes, etc., it's also designed as well to link into other media surveys as well. So it can act as a link to draw together media knowledge and consumer knowledge and leverage that within the marketplace.
Of course, it's 2 years since Touchpoints launched. Jim, what do you think's changed in media in that time, and particularly the way people consume media?
I think what is interesting in some ways is what hasn't changed. I guess a couple of years ago we would have anticipated the decline of some media and a very different way of behaving. People are behaving differently, but we're not seeing any declines in any media. Television viewing has actually increased since the last survey, and all the media, all the broadcast media, the print media, are all in pretty rude health. So that, interestingly enough, there hasn't been some dramatic changes in terms of overall media consumption. It's going up. It's just the way that people are using media. And also, what is very interesting is if you look at the different age groups, for example, if you look at 15 to 24-year-olds, the way that they're behaving, their media behaviour, is very different to other groups, and an indication of how people are going to behave in the future as well.
And of course, in those 2 years, Touchpoints must have changed as well to mirror that. What is new about Touchpoints this time round?
Well, we've extensively upgraded it, particularly on the digital front, to look at how people are using the internet, what kind of things they're doing on the internet. When we put together Touchpoints 1, social networking really didn't exist. A few people used Bebo, but it didn't exist as a phenomenon. So we put all that kind of thing on it. We've also looked at how people are beginning to use the internet more as a platform for consuming older media, more traditional media. So we can bring together brand portfolios. We've also looked at other areas of expansion within media, such as direct, and particularly retail and shopping, and the growth of the shopping, the retail media now, and the promotions within supermarkets and supermarket television, etc.
And to follow that, Lynne, we heard at the launch of Touchpoints, we heard that how the COI is using some of that data and planning to use some of that data to target smokers and drinkers more effectively. We've heard how News International has used the idea of the retail weekend to sell to someone like IKEA for the News of the World. What do you think has been the sort of most interesting nugget of information and idea to come out of this phase of Touchpoints?
Well, obviously the time-based data, I think, has been the most unique part of it. But I think it's the ability to draw together all the different parts of Touchpoints, because it's a huge interrelational database, and allow people to look at different things. As the COI were looking at moments of temptation for smokers, for when people might binge drink. They've got the opportunity to binge drink, compared to News International looking at it to establish the fact that people weren't reading on their home commute, and being able to launch the London paper, and it also giving them an overview really of the kind of mindset they were in, that they were actually moving towards home and entertainment rather than news you wanted in the morning.
And Jim, what have you found the most interesting from that? I mean, has there been a big surprise for you from this phase?
I don't think so much a surprise, but I think there's some very interesting nuggets that have come out of it. For example, going back to the 15 to 24-year-olds, if you look at the internet, the vast majority of adults use the internet for information. However, you look at 15 to 24-year-olds, their primary usage is for entertainment. If you look at mobile phones, for example, there is a very high instance of 15 to 24-year-olds both looking at video clips and downloading programs onto their mobile phones. And I think that this is very interesting. I also think what is also interesting is if you, for example, look at newspapers, while one might have anticipated that there would have been a decline in newspaper reading and a shift to digital media for news, that doesn't seem to be the case. You know, it's still over 90% of the population prefer getting their news on the basis of print matter.
So you don't think that, you know, it's sounding the bell or the bell is tolling for traditional media at all?
No, I don't think it's. I don't think the traditional media have anything to fear. If anything, what Touchpoints has shown is that they, you know, as I've said, they're in rude health. I think what it does show is how that they interact with other media, and you know, we are in a multitasking society now. So no media sits alone in isolation. They're all consumed and work alongside other media.
Of course. So what of course we're in danger of is talking about data and research and making that feel like a very dry and theoretical subject. I suppose the real question is, how are agencies and advertisers putting this into practice? And Jim, do you think that agencies and advertisers are taking Touchpoints seriously enough?
Well, I think the short answer to that is no currently. I think there are a number of reasons for that, and possibly we are much more ambitious on behalf of Touchpoints. I say no because I think it's an incredibly valuable and powerful piece of research, and I don't think anybody is using it to its full potential. I guess not necessarily surprisingly, because this is only Touchpoints 2, so it's pretty new into the market, and you know, we're still very much in a learning process of how to use it most effectively.
And Lynne, do you feel that the industry is behind it, that there is support there?
Absolutely. I think the general feeling this morning was incredibly positive, and people are beginning to use it more. It takes time, I think, particularly for something as complex and as large as Touchpoints, to be assimilated into day-to-day use. But it is happening, and it's beginning to filter through into awards papers, that kind of thing, and be quoted more and more. So it is happening. I'm always told that apparently it took the TGI 10 to 15 years to establish itself. We obviously don't have that long, Jim. But we, you know, it's made a great start, and I think the snowball has started rolling now. Yeah,
there is absolutely no doubt that the media agency fraternity is incredibly committed to it, and have gone on record and have underwritten the research. I think the challenge now is to increase the interest and usage of it amongst media owners. And actually, I would have to say as well, I think amongst creative agencies as well, because I think it has some very, very valuable uses amongst the creative agencies.
And of course, the really important part of that equation is the client and the advertiser. What are the lessons that you think they should take from Touchpoints, or are there any particular tips from what you've seen, from the data that you've seen from it?
I think it's a huge database. It covers a wide range of material in depth, and I think the best way of using it is to test it for hypotheses, but to think about what you want before you get into it. And that allows you to, I think, to lead through the data and get a really positive response to it.
And is that what you'll be saying to clients then, Jim?
Yeah, I think clients tend to be quite conservative. Will be reluctant to move away from tried and tested media strategies. And in some regards, Touchpoints is quite challenging because it is really saying you have to look at the whole gamut of media, across platforms. And yeah, it will challenge a lot of what is being done by clients at the moment, and of course their media agencies.
Of course, it feels like a cheeky question, but of course it's the one that's going to be on a lot of people's lips. We've heard about phase 2. We've started to see what's coming out of that, and obviously you've just had the recent launch. What's next for Touchpoints? What's going to happen next?
Am I answering this?
I think for both of us, it's onwards, upwards, bigger, better. We're hoping for a Touchpoints 3. We're planning for a Touchpoints 3 next year. We would like to make it a continuous survey to make it as up to date as possible the whole time. I think Jim has even greater plans for it.
Yeah, I think Touchpoints has the potential to become a currency. That's not to say it's going to replace the traditional currencies across the various other media, but it has the ability to become a currency because it unifies all the other media research. And I think that the modern world is about looking at how you communicate across media and across platforms, and to do that with the necessary degree of confidence, you need a currency to be able to measure it, and I feel that Touchpoints has the ability to deliver that.
Excellent. Well, listen, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for there, but I'm very grateful for Lynne and Jim for joining me in the studio. Please keep an eye out for brandrepublic.tv in the future. Let us know what you'd like to see on it, who you'd like to see on the show at brandrepublic.com/on-TV. I want to thank Lynne and Jim for taking part in today's show, and I'd like to thank our partners at the IPA and of course our sponsors ThinkBox. Thank you for watching and taking part. See you next time.